Yes, friends. Last time we saw our plants. From the bits menu on the left side, we saw how to place the bits. We can also eat with this. In the upcoming sections, we will gradually increase our visual impact in Twinmotion by creating small scenes. Our current section is objects. The object section is truly a very deep part. And when I say deep, I mean there are actually a lot of objects. Friends, you need to explore these, take them into the scene one by one, and examine them. Because using any render engine, friends, is also about being aware of the library inside, meaning being aware of the materials in the library. While doing these in the home section, there are many objects related to the interior, materials you will use indoors, or in the sports section. In the city section, there is the part with environmental effects and elements for outdoor settings. When you are creating a scene, using these is ideal in terms of the scene's interaction. But of course, as I mentioned in previous lessons, piling up too many objects can lead to complexity in the scene. Therefore, it's necessary to add a sufficient number of objects without causing too much complexity. Friends, there's also this situation. For example, let's say you added one of the benches here to the scene. For instance, I added it like this to the scene. I brought this one too. When adding objects, some objects have a dynamic placement feature. This is what it means, friends. For example, I took the object. Look, I'm still not releasing it. I'm holding it down. I came to this surface holds. Look, I came to this surface holds. In some objects, this is indicated as professional. In this way, you have the option to place it according to the sloped terrain. This is a nice feature, friends. You can leave it like this, or here, you can drop it onto objects at vertical 90 degrees, 180 degrees, or at different angles, and proceed this way. Friends, now, in the next part, decorations are an important section. In an example scene, friends, I want to show that. Now let's come here. I will type box. From here, friends, from the box section. Let's take this box and place it here. We can use this as a wall. From the scale section, let's reduce this a bit. Let's adjust its depth like this, friends. Yes, let's lower it a bit more like this. As you can see, we have used the scale like this. In other words, we have turned it into a wall. Now, there are some nice features in decals as well. There are important parts to create the effect and make it more effective. Now let's both summarize the parts we've done and enhance this richness. That is, the visual richness. Here, friends, when I come to the coating section, I will type concrete. Concrete means cement. Friends, look, I came to the concrete section from here. I will take a concrete coating from here. I'm looking at what I can use. It can be plain, or it can be a different coating. It can also be raw concrete. Look, we have many types of coatings here. We will deform this using these, friends. Now, let's see. So, it could be this. Look, a coating type like this, or let me take it like this. Yes, this could also work. So this could also be possible. I'm going to enlarge the scale part here a bit, friends. Let's have a concrete coating like this. Now, on this concrete coating, I mean something different from a coating. There are some important parameters that recognize the surface of the object, which we call records. These are within the object menu, and I'm mentioning this because it's important, friends. For example, let's say there are some parts, like there's a text that says, stop. Look, I placed the stop text on this concrete, as you can see. And when I place it, keep this in mind in Twinmotion. Friends, no matter which object you place, the object's properties appear on the right. Do you see the size? The size and the reduction. Or depth. What is meant by depth is actually being deeper, but we can't fully see the effect right now. The opacity section, in terms of seeing whether its opacity makes it brighter, more vibrant, or dimmer, friends, let's press the Move command from the stop section. Here. And I can change its position like this, as you can see. There's the color section. I can change its color. Let it stay in this section like this. There are many objects related to this here, as you can see. And I can create different effects to enhance the impact. For example, I can add graffiti here. For instance, look, a frog graffiti like this. Again, I can adjust its opacity, as you can see, like this. No frogs allowed. Yes, here. What else is there? there are different graffitis. Look, there are colorful graffitis. Additionally, there's water. Look, the water section. Friends, you can leave it like this, or place it here. These leave very nice effects on asphalt. Or here, look, there's a pollution factor, friends. Look at the pollution effects. Let's leave it like this, place it here, and put it over there. Let's create an effect here. Look, when I select this, I will fully adjust its opacity. These points are the selection parts. Look, there's a point in the middle of each. By selecting from those points, I can adjust their opacity. As you can see, it doesn't need to be too dominant, friends. I have significantly reduced the intensity, as you can see. You can make the stop part a bit more prominent and make it stand out a bit more. Like this, as you can see. Let's even go down and see. What's there? Look, the damage it looks like. The concrete is broken, as you can see, friends. Let's do these too. Let's increase the bottom part a bit more and not increase its size too much. Just a little from here. Look, when it goes to the ground, when it slides to the ground, you can still see its effect on the ground from here. I will do one. I left one here. Let me leave one here, friends. As you can see, let's leave one here if you like. Let it be like this. We can enrich this even more, friends. Look, there is a dirt part here. That is mossy dirt. So this is actually the dirt that will be used at the very bottom where the soil meets the concrete, friends. Look, I'm placing it here. I left it. Let me adjust its opacity like this again. I say it oppresses, so that the concrete part is visible behind the dirt. When I do it too much, look, it doesn't show. You can use this to adjust the dirt and rust intensity a bit more. Look, it's a process like this. What else is here? Look, there are dirt streaks flowing from above. Like this. And like this. As you can see, it's a slightly dirtier structure. Let's increase the opacity, decrease it. Again, like this from here. What else is there? Look, there's a damaged part. Here again, as you can see. And here, look, there are these leaves. Let's do it like this, right at the base of the wall. Let's create an object like this. And that's all for the decals here, friends. You can use many of the decals here in parts suitable for the scene. It needs to be suitable for the scene. What else is there? They have different graphics from the graffiti. In the object section, there are also particle parts. So, the particle part is actually this, friends. Here, to enhance the ambience, you can use fire, smoke, fog, water, and confetti. For example, let's use fog. For instance, I added the fog. Here, I added the mist. Here, friends. Look, it doesn't seem fully effective right now. Look, I'm staying outside. Because why? It's not dark outside. We need to create a slightly misty atmosphere. I came to the ambience part. Don't worry too much about these. I will show them in the scene creation part, friends. Let's come here. Look, I left it at sunset with a slight horror movie vibe. As you can see, I left a misty part. Let's leave a bit more mist on the ground as well. As you can see, it's such a process. In fact, let's close these parts here, friends. They shouldn't be visible here. I'm deleting them by pressing the delete key on the keyboard. I pressed it like this. And as you can see, I closed it in the particle section on the opponent's side. At the same time, there's also the fire part, friends. For example, when you place it from this part, let's do it like this. Let's do it like this. Here. You can create fire, smoke, and fog effects. When I come back to the smoke section, look, there are different notes. For example, different shapes in red and blue in the background. We can leave a fog smoke effect. Let's create an environment like this here. In fact, let's take our garden as well. Don't let it stay there. Let it stay here. Like this. There are confetti in the particle section again. These confetti are new, friends. When you release any confetti, look, it can be like this. This can be used more as an option in wedding and festival sections. Friends, In other parts, we used smoke, and there's water. So this might not be a suitable part for our stage at the moment, because these are the materials we will use to show the flow direction of the water. Look, like this, the water is flowing right now. So you can see the water flowing from here. This is the process, friends. As you can see, you can create different ambiances in various ways. Look, when I change the ambiance from here in a different way, the environment will change. I made it a bit more like a rainy weather. You can use these in this way. We are currently on the surface of Mars. This is the process, friends. In the object section, particles and the water part are related to water, friends. We can create water. Here again, we can adjust their size. In the object section, there is a sound part. There are human sounds, animal sounds, city sounds. We can use these by adding sound effects. Here, friends. For example, what do we have? Look. Like this. Or, let's see. There are various sounds like this, friends. Siren sound. These sounds become active when you get closer to the scene, friends. For instance, let's say you want to trigger an alarm in such a place. You want to trigger a siren sound. For example, look. Look, it says distance 0 meters. So it should activate when it reaches 1 meter. When it reaches 1 meter, do you see the circular effect around it? For instance, let me set this to 3 meters. For example, look, friends, did you see the circle coming? So let's imagine we're creating a forest scene while setting up the scene. While navigating the forest scene, you can make a different sound activate when a specific character reaches a certain point. A nice feature. Let's try it, for example. What's there? What is this? Let's see. It sounds like water. Of course, you can also add sounds here, friends. Look. Bird sounds. We won't be using these in the objects section. These later change into sliding doors and automatic doors, friends. These are the parts we will see in the objects section. Here, we also have our ready-made materials. So we have ready-made materials to use. For example, you can use these here and diversify them by applying textures on them yourself. Friends, look, a ramp, circle. By using them this way, you can apply textures and coatings on them to conduct tests. Friends, these are really nice topics. Look, let's create a feature by placing it here. We had seen it before. Look, when I place this and press the physics engine, friends, normally it should come downwards. Let's do it this way. Let's move it upwards. We saw it in the previous lesson. Look now, I'm pressing, it should come downwards, but it didn't. Actually, normally it should descend. Anyway, as I said, there are many objects here. From this section here, you can also bring the starting object, that is, the starting ground plate. Look, here you can bring the starting plate, or you can place objects yourself, using circular parts like this, friends.